I knew something was wrong the moment the music stopped, because I was the only one who noticed. Everyone else kept talking, laughing, drinking, dancing, like the speakers hadn't just gone silent mid-chorus. But for me, the sudden quiet hit like a warning shot. Not because of the silence itself, but because I could finally hear her. My wife, Lila, laughing. Not her normal laugh. The one she uses at home when I accidentally burn the toast again and she calls me her little disaster. No, this was different. Sharper, brighter. A kind of laugh she hasn't used with me in months. It floated from the other side of the house, and even though there were at least 50 people in between us, my ears locked onto it like a pathetic bloodhound desperate for affection. I tried to tell myself not to overthink it. But overthinking is kind of my entire personality. If there were Olympic medals for imagining worst-case scenarios, I'd own the podium. I pushed through the crowd, apologizing every 3 seconds because someone's shoulder brushed mine or I stepped near someone's foot. By the time I reached the hallway, my heartbeat was louder than the music that suddenly kicked back on. Her laugh came again, this time followed by a man's voice. A deep one. I wish I could say I turned around, that I respected her privacy, that I wasn't some insecure, trembling husband who needed proof of what he already feared. But I kept walking, slowly, quietly, like some tragic detective in a movie who already knows the ending but insists on watching it unfold anyway. Halfway down the hall, a group of people burst out of a bedroom behind me, scaring me so badly I dropped my drink. It splashed all over the floor and onto my shoes, but no one noticed. No one ever notices when I'm falling apart. Her voice came again, closer now. Then I saw it. Not through a cracked door. Not through shadows. Not by accident. I saw it because they didn't bother hiding. The party had a small indoor balcony, a kind of overlook above the living room. And there she was, leaning against the railing, leaning toward him. His hand was braced beside her head like they were the lead characters in some terrible romantic drama. She wasn't pulling away. She wasn't caught in a misunderstanding. She was looking at him the way she used to look at me before life turned into bills and chores, and her saying she was too tired for connection. And I, like the absolute weakling I am, just stood there staring while my cup dripped onto my sock. For a moment, I swear she sensed me. Her eyes shifted over his shoulder, and even though she didn't meet my gaze directly, something in her expression flickered. Guilt? Panic? Or maybe just annoyance that her husband was still at the same party she was emotionally exiting. I didn't confront them. I didn't shout. I didn't even clear my throat. I just walked away, down the stairs, through the front door, past 2 drunk guys arguing about whose car was blocking the driveway. I walked until the music faded completely, until the cold finally reached my chest, until the reality of what I saw felt heavier than my own legs. By midnight, she had texted me once. Where did you disappear to? By 2 a.m., 3 times. Please answer. We need to talk. By 4:17 a.m., the last one came in, the words shaky and uneven. Please come home. I didn't know you were there. I didn't mean for it to look like that. Please, Linwood. And by the time the sun rose, I heard from her sister. Lila had been crying for hours, but I hadn't even said a single word. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. I just drove. Nowhere in particular. Through empty parking lots. Through neighborhoods I didn't recognize. I even drove past our old apartment. The first one Lila and I lived in after we got married. I sat outside of it for 20 minutes, staring at the building like it held some kind of answer. But of course it didn't. All it held were memories I didn't know were already rotting. By sunrise, I ended up in a diner just off Route 41. One of those old ones with cracked red booths and waitresses who call you Han, even if you look like death. I must have looked exactly like that, because the woman behind the counter didn't even ask for my order. She just poured me coffee, slid over a plate of dry toast, and said, "Rough night." I nodded once, and that was all the talking I could handle. Meanwhile, my phone kept buzzing in my pocket. I didn't look at it. I already knew what was waiting. Missed calls, more texts, and probably a carefully crafted paragraph trying to explain how it wasn't what it looked like. That's always what they say, right? Even when it's exactly what it looked like. I started replaying the night over and over again in my head, torturing myself. Every moment, every laugh she gave him, the way his hand was above her shoulder like he owned the air she breathed, and the way she looked back, not startled, not embarrassed, just aware. You know what the worst part was? I didn't even have anger. Not real anger. I had shame. I had humiliation. I had this hollow, scraping ache in my chest, like I was just some extra in her life, not the husband she promised forever to. And maybe I'd been that extra for a while, but I was too afraid to ask. Too afraid to open that door and find the room empty. When I finally got back to our house, the lights were on. All of them. Like she thought that would bring me back faster. Lila was sitting on the stairs, barefoot, still in her dress from the party. Her mascara was smeared and her eyes were red, just like her sister had said. She stood up the second I opened the door. "Linwood, please," she started, but I held up my hand. Just one hand. That was all it took to silence her. I walked past her, set my keys on the hallway table, and headed straight to the bedroom. She followed, begging me to listen, saying it wasn't what I thought, that she was just talking, that he was drunk, that she didn't know I was even still at the party. All of it blurred into one long excuse that meant nothing because she'd already made the choice before I ever saw it. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I didn't ask her to explain what she was doing pressed up against a man who once called her dangerous in a good way on a work trip text. I just opened the closet, grabbed the first suitcase I could find, and began packing. Not everything, just what I needed. That's when she snapped. "Are you seriously going to leave without even hearing me out? Without even fighting for this?" That broke me. Fighting? I'd been fighting for this marriage alone for months while she drifted further into her job, into her phone, into whatever fantasy she was building that didn't include me. And now that I was finally walking away, now I was the one who didn't care enough? I turned to her and said, in the calmest voice I could manage, "If you wanted me to fight for you, you shouldn't have spent the whole night flirting with someone who wanted to replace me." She tried to grab my hand. I pulled away. By the time I walked out with my bag, she was on the floor in the hallway, crying. But I didn't look back. Not once. I checked into a roadside motel about 40 minutes away from the house, the kind with buzzing lights and a plastic key card that barely worked. The carpet smelled like wet cardboard and disappointment, but it was quiet. That's all I needed. Quiet. No Lila's voice. No questions. No fake apologies. Just silence. I laid on the lumpy mattress, still fully dressed, staring at the water stains on the ceiling. My phone was charging on the nightstand, but I didn't touch it. Not even when it lit up again and again. I didn't need to read her words to know what they said. I'd been married to her long enough to predict her rhythm. Guilt, deflection, panic, blame, bargaining, tears. All of it, scripted. I couldn't cry. I wanted to. I wanted to let it all out and collapse into some ugly, sobbing mess like you see in movies when the guy finds out his wife's in love with someone else. But I didn't. My body just refused. It was like every emotion inside me had folded up into a tight little ball and buried itself behind my ribs. Somewhere around 2 a.m., there was a knock on the motel door. My heart stopped. For a split second, I thought, no way she found me. I got up slowly, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. No one. I opened it a crack and found nothing but cold air and a plastic grocery bag sitting on the doormat. Inside, a toothbrush, 2 granola bars, a travel-sized deodorant, and a note written in her handwriting that said, "I know I messed up. Please take care of yourself." She had followed me, or tracked me, or guessed. Either way, she had come. I left the bag where it was, closed the door, and locked it again. The next morning, I turned my phone back on fully. 28 unread messages. 6 voicemails. A photo from her sister of Lila curled up on our couch, wrapped in the blanket I usually use, her eyes swollen shut. But that didn't undo anything. Then came the twist I didn't expect. I got a text, not from Lila, from someone else. It simply said, "Thought you should know. You're not crazy. Check your email." No name, just a number I didn't recognize. I opened my email, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Screenshots, photos, time-stamped, all of them showing messages between Lila and Ryder. Private chats, not work-related, not friendly, pure emotional infidelity, and more. Plans to meet up outside work. Jokes about me. Conversations about how he wouldn't notice and how she felt alive again. The worst one, a picture of them together. In her car. From a week ago. He was in the passenger seat. She was smiling. I stared at that photo until my screen dimmed itself. This wasn't just a mistake at a party. It was a long-running betrayal. She was never caught in a moment. She was just surprised the curtain got pulled back. And now? Now I had proof. Real, undeniable proof. And suddenly, all that numbness started to melt into something sharp, something cold, something that wasn't just sadness anymore. It was resolve. I didn't rush to respond. I didn't scream. I didn't forward the screenshots. I didn't even confront her. Not yet. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. Quiet, steady control. Like the gears in my mind had finally stopped stalling and started turning. I stared at that email a dozen times, memorizing every line. The messages weren't just cruel, they were detailed. She told him things I thought were sacred between us. She joked about how I always folded the laundry like a confused raccoon. She said I was too emotionally heavy, that I sucked the joy out of a room, that she wished she had met him first, that maybe she was meant for more. That line stayed with me the most. Meant for more. Like I was less. Like I was a detour on her way to someone more exciting. But instead of spiraling, I did something I knew she'd never expect. I booked an appointment with a divorce attorney. Not a dramatic one. Just a calm, quiet consultation. A man named Harris with a soft voice and a very organized desk. He told me my rights. He walked me through the process. He explained what I'd need to gather and how to prepare. Then I went home. Not to reconcile. To watch. Lila wasn't there when I arrived. Her car was gone, her phone wasn't answering, and her makeup drawer in the bathroom looked like it had been ransacked. For a second, I wondered if she'd gone to him. Maybe she had. Maybe that's exactly what I needed her to do. I opened my laptop, created a new folder, and titled it Reality. Inside it, I dropped every screenshot, every image, every text. Then I started collecting bank statements, cell phone logs, GPS records. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I was trying to humiliate her. Because I was finally ready to stop pretending I didn't know who she'd become. At 11:17 p.m., the front door opened. I stayed seated in the dining room, lights low, computer glowing in front of me. She froze when she saw me. The mascara was back on, her lips painted, perfume heavy. She had tried to make herself into someone I'd miss. But I wasn't fooled. "Hey," she said, voice small. "I didn't think you'd be here." "I live here," I said. My voice didn't even shake. She came closer. "Linwood, I'm sorry. I've been thinking about everything, and I saw the messages," I interrupted. She stopped walking. I saw the breath catch in her chest. "What messages?" "Ryder. The ones where you said you wished I'd disappear. The ones where you called me a ghost. The photo in the car. The one with your hand on his leg." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like someone had just pulled the oxygen from the room. "I didn't mean those things," she finally whispered. "It was stupid. I was confused." I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't confused. She was caught. And now she was scrambling for the script, trying to remember how to make me the bad guy for not forgiving her fast enough. "I met with a lawyer," I said, watching the color drain from her face. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to finish." Her knees buckled, and she sat down at the table across from me, like it was the first time she realized she might actually lose everything. Her hands were trembling. Her voice cracked. She whispered, "You can't mean that." But I did. And I was calm. Terrifyingly calm. Because this time, I wasn't leaving the house in silence. This time, she would. She didn't cry right away. That surprised me. I expected the waterworks to pour out the second I mentioned the lawyer, but instead, she just sat there, staring. Like she was trying to figure out how real this was. Maybe it hadn't sunk in yet. Maybe she thought it was a scare tactic, something to guilt her back into pretending she still loved me. But I wasn't bluffing. Not this time. I'd spent too long in the background of my own marriage, too long holding on to someone who had clearly let go months ago. So I said nothing more. Just waited. Finally, she whispered, "You're really going to throw everything away? Just like that?" That sentence snapped something in me. Like I was the one throwing it away. Like I hadn't spent the last year trying to hold it together while she slowly slipped behind late-night texts, lipstick she stopped wearing for me, and emotional absences she labeled as just tired. I looked at her and said, "I'm not throwing anything. I'm letting go of something that already left me." Her eyes started to water then, and I could see the fear start to crawl in. She tried to spin the narrative, of course. Said Ryder was a mistake, that he meant nothing, that it was all emotional, never physical, that I'd misread everything. She begged me to believe she was just lost, not unfaithful. But the screenshot said otherwise. Her words weren't a one-night slip. They were seeds she'd planted and nurtured behind my back. She'd given him the version of herself she used to give me. And worse, she let him mock me. That part broke something in me I didn't even know was still fragile. She followed me around the house as I packed more of my things into boxes. She kept saying, "We can fix this." Over and over, like a chant. Like she could speak it into truth if she said it enough. I didn't yell. I didn't lash out. I just moved. Mechanical. Focused. Every drawer I opened reminded me of something simple we used to share. A pair of socks we both wore, the takeout menus with our scribbled notes, the Polaroid from our first camping trip. She stood in the doorway of the closet while I pulled my shoes from under the bed and said, "You're not even going to try?" And I said, "You didn't, Lila. You already chose not to." That's when her voice cracked into a higher pitch and she screamed, "He didn't mean anything." I turned to her slowly and said, "Then why did you text him for 5 months and stop texting me?" That shut her down. She had no answer for that. No defense for how far back the betrayal really went. And the worst part? I knew if I hadn't seen it, she would have just kept going. Kept both lives. Kept me in the fog while giving him the light. Later that night, after I loaded the last box into my car, she stood by the door barefoot, arms wrapped around herself like that would keep her from falling apart. She asked, "Is this really how it ends?" I looked at her and said, "No. It ended the night you smiled at him like I was invisible. This is just the part where I finally accept it." I walked out, closed the door behind me, and didn't look back. Not this time. What she didn't know, what she still doesn't know, is that I left something behind. A small flash drive, hidden under the sink, with everything. Every message, every photo, every timestamp, just in case she ever tries to rewrite the story. Because I know her. And she will. 2 days passed before she showed up at my motel door. It was just after 7 p.m., and I had been sitting in the same spot for hours, doing nothing but scrolling through apartment listings I couldn't afford and eating dry cereal out of a coffee mug. The knock was soft, almost apologetic. I didn't answer right away. I knew it was her. I think I felt her approaching before I even heard the steps in the parking lot. When I finally opened the door, there she was, wearing the old hoodie I left behind, her face pale, her lips trembling, mascara smudged from tears she clearly hadn't finished crying. She didn't speak at first, just looked at me like she was still trying to convince herself I was real and not just a ghost she'd made up to feel guilty about. When she finally did say something, it was barely above a whisper. "Can I just talk?" I didn't say no. I should have. I should have closed the door right then. But I didn't. I stepped aside, and she walked in like a stranger in a place she once called home. She sat on the edge of the motel bed like it might fall apart if she leaned too hard. Her eyes scanned the room, pausing on the half-packed duffel bag, the open legal pad full of divorce notes, the untouched food container beside the trash. Then she turned to me and said the one thing I never expected to hear. He wasn't the only one. It felt like the room dipped sideways, like gravity tilted. I actually had to sit down. She started talking, too fast, like she was trying to get it all out before she lost the nerve. There was another man, before Ryder, someone from the gym. Just once, she said. It didn't mean anything, she added, like that somehow made it better. I sat there, gripping the arm of the chair so tightly my fingers went numb. She cried, apologized, said she was scared, that I'd become too safe, too predictable, too available, like those were flaws. She said something then that haunts me even now. She said, "I didn't cheat to replace you. I cheated to feel something again." As if that made her brave. As if ripping out my heart was some kind of personal growth exercise. I didn't yell. I didn't break anything. I just asked her one question. "So what do you feel right now?" She didn't answer. She just broke. Fully. Collapsed into herself on the bed, sobbing into her hands like she was the victim in all of this. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just sat in the car in the parking lot, windows fogged, hands on the steering wheel, replaying her confession over and over. Not just the words, but how numb she seemed saying them. Like she'd already processed everything and was now just cleaning up the mess. The next morning, I told her to go. She didn't argue. She walked out of the motel room without asking for another chance. And I realized something that hit harder than the affair itself. She had never come to win me back. She came to unburden herself. To confess, not to rebuild. She got to cry. She got closure. And I got silence. The kind that doesn't heal. The kind that eats at you in waves. When you're brushing your teeth, or trying to remember where you left your keys, or standing in line at the grocery store wondering if the woman ahead of you would have done the same thing if she'd married a man like me. I didn't hear from her for a week. Not a single call. No texts. No middle-of-the-night paragraphs or fake emergencies to lure me back. Just 7 days of silence. And maybe that should have felt like relief. Maybe I should have been proud of her for finally respecting boundaries after detonating our marriage like it was a failed science experiment. But instead, I found myself waking up at 3 a.m. with her name still sitting like a stone on my chest. Not because I missed her, but because the silence made it too easy to forget it had all been real. And then, on day 8, my phone rang. But it wasn't her. It was her mother. I almost didn't answer. I hovered over the screen for a full 10 seconds, thumbs shaking, heartbeat slamming. When I finally picked up, all I heard was, "Linwood, I think you should come by the house." Our house. Still hers, technically. I hadn't gone back since I left. I didn't want to. I didn't need to see our wedding photo flipped face down, or the fridge magnets I used to rearrange out of boredom, or the couch we bought together after 5 arguments in 3 furniture stores. I had built a fragile piece inside my motel walls, and I didn't want it shattered. But her mother's voice wasn't normal. So I went. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Lila's car wasn't there. That was the first red flag. She hadn't gone anywhere without that car in years. Her mother opened the door before I could even knock. She looked pale. Not grieving. Not broken. Just hollow. "She's gone," she said, without preamble. I blinked. "What do you mean, gone?" She packed 2 bags, left a note, and disappeared. The room spun again. It was becoming a pattern with her, dropping emotional bombs, and then vanishing before the smoke cleared. I asked where she'd gone, and her mother just handed me the note. It was scribbled on the back of a utility bill, written in blue ink, the kind of rushed, frantic handwriting Lila only used when she was overwhelmed or lying to herself. It said, "I don't know how to fix any of this. I'm sorry I destroyed what we had. I thought I wanted freedom, but it feels like drowning. Please don't hate me forever. L." I didn't know what to feel. Fear? Anger? Hope? None of it fit. I kept rereading the word freedom over and over again, like it held some kind of secret meaning. She had called him freedom. She had called being with me safe. What she never realized was that I gave her everything without a leash. She wasn't caged. She was protected, and she confused that for being trapped. Later that day, I found out from a friend of hers that she had been let go from her job. Ryder had been transferred, code for quietly pushed out. HR had gotten involved. Something about inappropriate behavior at work functions. She hadn't told me any of it. Probably because it would have meant admitting that her shiny new escape plan had completely imploded. She had burned the house down to chase a fantasy, and now she was wandering through the ash, pretending she was free. That night, for the first time since everything collapsed, I stood in the middle of our empty bedroom and felt nothing but calm. Cold, clear calm. I opened the drawer beside the bed and pulled out the flash drive I had hidden. The one with all the screenshots, all the evidence. I held it in my hand for a long time, then put it back. Because I realized something. I didn't need proof anymore. She had done the job for me. It took me a while to admit I didn't hate her. That was the part that made healing harder. Wanting to hate her, needing to, but coming up empty. The betrayal had cut deep, yes. But underneath all the shattered trust and whispered lies, I still remembered the girl I used to love. The one who once danced with me barefoot in the living room after a storm knocked the power out. The one who used to write me sticky notes in the fridge that said, "I believe in you," even when I didn't believe in myself. I couldn't hate her, but I also couldn't save her. The weeks passed, then months, and slowly, the weight of what she did started to lift. I stopped waking up with her name in my throat. I stopped scanning crowds for her laugh. I even stopped checking her social media, which was a bigger deal than it sounds. I gave myself permission to let go, one painful breath at a time. And then something strange happened. I started laughing again. Not the fake kind you force in front of coworkers, or the polite chuckles you offer in awkward conversations. Real laughter. The kind that rises up from nowhere when life catches you off guard and reminds you it's not done with you yet. It started with small things. A corgi in a Halloween costume. A badly parked car with a "nailed it" bumper sticker. A kid in a coffee shop who loudly asked his mom if grown-ups ever poop their feelings. And just like that, I realized the world hadn't stopped turning just because mine had cracked in half. I got a new apartment. Nothing fancy, just a small third-floor place with too much sunlight and a creaky balcony. But it was mine. Every corner, every shelf, every late-night moment of peace. I filled it with second-hand furniture and first-hand hope. I even hung up art. Bad art, but it made me smile. And that felt like progress. I started going to therapy. I didn't tell anyone, not even my friends. I just sat in a quiet room once a week and let a stranger help me gather all the pieces of myself I thought I'd lost. And every time I left, I felt a little lighter, a little more whole. Then, one Saturday morning, while waiting in line at a bookstore cafe, I met someone. Her name was Elsie. She dropped her coffee lid, and I instinctively picked it up for her. She smiled and made a joke about how clumsy she was. I laughed, and something in my chest didn't hurt. We talked for 15 minutes and ended up walking through the aisles like old friends. We didn't talk about pain, or betrayal, or exes. We talked about books, favorite road trips, the smell of fresh waffles, and why cats always seem to judge you. It was simple, uncomplicated, and for once, I didn't feel like I was holding my breath. We exchanged numbers. I didn't expect anything. I wasn't looking for a rescue. But what I found was a reminder: there's still good out there. Still people who don't speak in half-truths. Still moments that feel like warm light instead of cold fog. Lila never came back. And that's okay. I think she's out there somewhere, still trying to figure out who she is without me. And I genuinely hope she does. As for me, I've finally stopped asking why. Because I've started living in the what now. And every day, the answer feels a little brighter.